Welcome to the Wonder Fungi Podcast. Today, we are under pressure.
We certainly are. And for once, we're not talking about, deadlines or work stress. We're talking about real physical atmospheric pressure.
Exactly. We are diving deep into what I think is maybe the most intense, high-stakes part of growing mushrooms.
It's funny because when you think about mycology, you think of, I don't know, misty forests, foraging, maybe a nice risotto. It seems chill.
It has that whole back-to-nature vibe, for sure, that cottagecore aesthetic. But the second you decide to cultivate fungi indoors, the moment you bring it into your home, you're not really a gardener anymore.
You're not. You're entering a war zone.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That's totally the feeling I got from our source material today. We're looking at the mechanics of mycology, sterilization physics, and pressure cooking. And honestly, it reads less like a hobby guide and more like a survival horror manual. It's got these invisible enemies, fortified bunkers, WMDs. It really does, because the central conflict here, it isn't you versus the mushroom. You and the mushroom, you're on the same team. The real fight is the invisible war between you, the cultivator, and the entire microscopic world.
And it's a world filled with some seriously tough customers. So, okay, the mission for today's deep dive is to figure out why just boiling something on your stove isn't good enough, what an endospore actually is, and spoiler alert, it's terrifying, and how a simple pressure cooker is basically the only weapon you have that can win this war.
It's a complete shift in thinking. You have to stop thinking about, cooking grain. You have to start thinking about sterilization physics. It is the absolute gatekeeper of the entire hobby. If you don't get this one part right, nothing else you do matters.
Nothing.
You can have the best genetics in the world, the perfect substrate, perfect climate control. If you lose the war against the endospore in this very first step, it's just game over before you even start.
So let's unpack that. The first thing that really jumped out at me in the source was this critical distinction between clean and sterile. I think in our everyday lives, we use those words, pretty much interchangeably.
Oh, completely.
If I wipe down my kitchen counter with an alcohol wipe, I say, it's sterile. I wash my hands really well, they're sterile.
Right. And in a casual sense, that's fine. You mean it's safe for you. You're not going to get sick if you make a sandwich on that counter. But in microbiology, it's not even close. And that right there is where so many new growers fall flat on their face immediately.
They confuse sanitization with sterilization?
They think they're the same thing, but the difference between them is, well, it's infinite. It's the difference between some and zero.
Okay, so let's get the definitions right because the source is super specific.
Yeah.
Sanitization is defined as reducing the microbial load.
Right. And let's really think about that phrase, reducing the load. Think about wiping a table down with 70% isopropyl alcohol. What are you doing? You're killing a lot of stuff. Maybe you're killing 99.9% of the active bacteria on that surface.
You're thinning the herd.
You're thinning the herd. You're knocking the population down from, say, 10 million cells to maybe 10,000. And for us, for our big human bodies with immune systems, that's great. That's clean.
Our bodies can handle a few thousand invaders.
Exactly. We live in a dirty world. We don't need absolute zero to survive. And the source actually points out that this level of clean sanitization is perfect for some parts of the process.
Like the fruiting chamber, the plastic tub you use later on.
And there's a really good biological reason for that. Once your mushroom mycelium has completely taken over its food source, once it's fully colonized that block of grain or sawdust, it's strong. It has its own immune system in a way.
It can defend itself.
It can. It produces these things called metabolites. They're basically little chemical weapons like custom-made antibiotics that the fungus excretes to protect its territory. So if you put a fully colonized block into a tub you just wipe down with alcohol, the mushroom's fine. It can fight off the few hundred bacteria that are left.
You're just giving it a fair fight. You're reducing the enemy numbers so the mushroom can win the turf war.
Precisely. But then we get to the very beginning, the grain spawn. And this is where the source draws a hard, bright line in the sand. For the grain, it says sanitization is completely useless. You need sterilization.
And the definition here is it's hardcore. The complete destruction of all life forms.
All of them, not most of them, not 99.999%, 100%, zero survivors. It is the one non-negotiable absolute requirement for your grain spawn. There is absolutely no margin for error.
So why? Why the massive difference? Why can't I just wipe down a plastic tub, but I have to go full-on nuclear on a jar of rye berries?
Because that uncolonized grain, it's the most nutritious, perfect food source imaginable for microbes. Think about what a grain of rice or wheat actually is. It's a seed. It is a little packet of starch, carbohydrates, nitrogen, and all the energy needed to grow an entire plant.
It's a biological buffet.
It's more than a buffet. For a single bacterium, it's like winning the Powerball lottery. And here's the kicker. You, the cultivator, are taking this perfect food, you're adding water to it, making it nice and moist, and then you're sealing it inside a glass jar.
A warm, dark, moist jar.
A perfect incubator. If you only sanitize that grain, if you leave even a handful of bacteria alive or a couple of mold spores and then you seal it up, you haven't started a mushroom grow. You've just built a luxury resort for bacteria.
And they will check in immediately.
Oh, they'll do more than check in. They will take over the whole hotel. See, bacterial cells, they divide roughly every 20 minutes in ideal conditions. And people don't really grasp what exponential growth means.
Okay, lay the math on us.
If you start with one single bacterium, just one survivor, in 20 minutes you have 2. An hour later you have 8. Doesn't sound too bad. But in just 12 hours, you have over 68 billion.
Wow.
Your mushroom spores, on the other hand, they take days just to wake up and germinate. By the time your mycelium is ready to start growing, the bacteria have already conquered the entire world inside that jar, eaten all the food, and turned it into a toxic swamp.
So for the grain, clean is a failing grade. You need dead.
You need a complete biological void. A blank slate.
I love that. Clean versus dead. It just clarifies the mission objective perfectly. If there's anything alive in that jar before you add your mushrooms, you've already lost the game.
You have, and that brings us to the main character of our horror story, the villain. The reason why getting things truly dead is so much harder than it sounds.
The Endospore.
The Endospore.
I mean, even the name sounds like a boss from a video game. It's menacing.
It is a truly formidable piece of evolution. The source uses bacillus as the main example, which is a type of bacteria that is literally everywhere. It's in the soil, it's in dust, it's probably on your skin right now. Most of the time it's totally harmless, but it has this survival mechanism that is just, frankly, mind-boggling.
So paint us a picture. What exactly is an endospore? Is it like a seed? An egg?
It's more like a panic room, or maybe a time capsule. Imagine a normal, happy bacteria cell. It's swimming around, eating, dividing, living its best life. But then suddenly conditions get bad, maybe the heat gets turned up, or the food runs out, or it gets too dry.
It senses the apocalypse is coming.
Exactly. Now, most cells would just die, but this one, it does something incredible. It makes a perfect copy of its essential parts, its DNA, its ribosomes, and then it builds a fortress around that copy inside itself. It wraps the DNA in multiple thick layers of a tough protein coat.
The source calls it a bunker.
That is the perfect metaphor. It builds a concrete and steel bunker around its DNA, sucks all the water out to protect the machinery, and then it just goes to sleep. The rest of the original cell disintegrates, leaving just this tiny armored core. That's the endospore.
And in that state, it's not even really alive in the normal sense.
Not at all. It's not eating, it's not dividing, it's not breathing. Its metabolism is at 0. It's just waiting.
Yeah.
And these things are tough on a level that is hard to comprehend.
Okay, so how tough are we talking? Because I think we tend to underestimate microscopic life. We think, oh, I'll just boil it.
They are biologically engineered to survive extinction-level events. They can survive insane levels of UV radiation that would fry us. They can survive the vacuum of space. They found viable endospores in insects trapped in amber for 25 million years.
25 million.
Yes, they can withstand chemical disinfectants that would kill anything else. And most importantly for us, heat.
The stats in the source on this are what really blew my mind. It says they can survive being in boiling water that's 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 Celsius for hours.
For hours, yes. And that is the absolute core of the problem for a cultivator. We're all taught from childhood that boiling water makes it safe.
Yeah. If you're out camping, you boil the river water to kill the germs.
And that works. For things like E. coli or Giardia, the things that make us sick, boiling kills them almost instantly. They die at like 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiling is total overkill for them. But for a Bacillus endospore, boiling water is just a pleasant, warm bath. It doesn't even notice.
That is just, it's terrifying from a cultivator's perspective.
Yeah.
So you can have your jar of grain on the stove, boiling away all afternoon. Steam is filling your kitchen. You think you're going scorched earth on these microbes. But inside that jar, the endospores are just sitting in their little bunkers, basically checking their watches, waiting for you to give up.
They're completely dormant. They're not metabolizing, so the heat doesn't really disrupt their life processes because they don't have any active life processes at that moment.
Yeah.
The bunker holds.
That's the real survival horror part. You can't see them. You think you've won because you did the thing that you were always told kills germs. You feel safe. You think, I boil this grain for an hour, it has to be sterile.
And that is exactly where the Trojan horse effect kicks in. This is the absolute nightmare scenario that makes so many beginners quit the hobby in frustration.
Okay, so walk us through it. What happens next? I've just boiled my jar of oats on the stove. I think it's sterile. What's the timeline of my failure?
All right, let's play out the tragedy. So you've boiled your oats. You definitely killed all the living bacteria, the active cells. You killed any mold spores that were in there. You killed the yeast. You feel good. The grain looks and smells clean.
Okay.
You take it off the heat. You put the lid on the jar. You let it cool down to room temperature because you have to before you can inject your mushroom spores. And as it cools down,
The conditions become perfect again.
perfect. It's warm, but not too hot. It's wet. There is an abundance of delicious food. And the endospore, its outer shell, has these incredibly sophisticated chemical sensors. It detects that the intense heat is gone. It detects the presence of water. It detects sugars and amino acids.
The all-clear signal.
It's the all-clear signal the danger is over. So it begins the process of germination. It opens the bunker doors. It rehydrates its internal machinery. It sheds that tough outer coat and emerges, once again, as a normal, living, hungry, vegetative bacteria cell. It wakes up.
And it wakes up to find itself completely alone in a 5-star hotel with an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Exactly. It has zero competition because you were kind enough to kill off all its rivals with the boiling water. So it starts dividing and then dividing again and again. And since it's a bacteria, its digestive process basically turns your grain into a slimy, foul-smelling mush. This is what growers call wet rot.
Wet rot. Even the name is disgusting.
It is. The grain literally looks wet and greasy inside the jar. It pulls away from the glass, and the smell. If you ever open one of these jars, you will never forget it. It's like old gym socks mixed with rotting fruit. It is the smell of failure.
And the really cool part is, you, the grower, you don't even know this is happening for a while.
Not at all. You inject your expensive mushroom spores into this jar, you put it on a shelf, and you wait, and nothing happens. Or worse, your mushroom mycelium starts to grow for a few days, and then it just hits this wall of bacterial slime and dies. You've wasted weeks of time, money on spores, all because of an invisible enemy that tricked you.
The deception of the dormant state. It played possum.
It's nature's ultimate sleeper agent. And this is why our intuition fails us so badly here. Our intuition says, fire is hot, fire kills things. And science says, well, yes, but this thing requires a very specific amount of energy to destroy, and you're not providing it.
So, okay, we've identified the enemy. It's a microscopic, heat-resistant tank that lives in a bunker. And we know that our most common weapon-boiling water is like firing a BB gun at it. This brings us to the physics of the problem.
Yes, the physics of the pot.
I think this is where some people might start to tune out, but the source makes it so clear. You cannot win this fight unless you understand a little bit of the ideal gas law. We have to talk about why we can't just make the water hotter.
Right, it's all about thermal limits. We have what you could call a temperature gap. To kill an endospore, to actually crack open that bunker and shred the proteins holding it together, the science says you need to hit 250 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 121 degrees Celsius. That is the magic kill temp.
250 is the target, but at sea level, water boils at 212 Fahrenheit.
And that, in a regular pot, is a hard physical limit.
But wait, explain this to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
If I turn my stove burner up to the absolute maximum setting, I mean, flames are licking up the side of the pot, I got a huge, violent, roaring boil going. Surely that's hotter than a gentle simmer.
Nope. And this is one of the most counterintuitive things about basic thermodynamics. In an open pot, at a given atmospheric pressure, liquid water physically cannot get hotter than its boiling point.
That just breaks my brain a little. Where does all that extra energy go? If I'm burning more gas, that heat has to be going somewhere.
It is. It's going into the phase change. This is called the latent heat of vaporization. So think of the water molecules in the pot as a crowd of people in a room. The heat you're adding is like the energy of the music, making them dance faster and faster. Temperature is just a measurement of how fast they're all moving.
Okay, so I'm turning up the volume.
You're turning up the volume. The water heats up from room temp to 211 degrees. They're dancing faster and faster. But at 212 degrees, they hit a critical speed. They're moving so fast that they can break free from the attraction to their neighbors. They literally launch themselves out of the liquid and into the air.
They turn into steam.
They turn into steam. And all that extra energy you're adding by turning up the stove, It's not making the water molecules left in the pot dance any faster. All of it is being used to kick more and more molecules out of the liquid phase and into the gas phase.
So the steam is just carrying the extra energy away with it.
It's a self-regulating system. The steam escapes, taking the heat with it, and the liquid water in the pot just stays at 212. It plateaus. You can put a blowtorch under that pot. The water will not get hotter. It will just boil away much, much faster.
Wow. That's incredibly frustrating when you think about it from a sterilization perspective. You are literally hitting a wall imposed by the laws of physics.
The universe is telling you, you shall not pass. The gap between 212, where your water is stuck, and 250, where you need to be to kill the endospores, that gap is where the bacteria live. It's their safe zone. They win every single time in an open pot.
So we can't just power through it. We need to be clever. We need to cheat the system.
We have to change the rules of the game. We can't make the endospore weaker, so we have to find a way to make water hotter. We got to change the boiling point itself.
Enter the hero of our story, the pressure cooker.
The PC, or the pressure canner.
Right. I mean, I always thought of these as just something my grandmother used to make pot roast really fast. But in this context, the source describes it as a piece of laboratory equipment, a sterilization device.
It absolutely is. A home pressure cooker is just a small, consumer-grade autoclave. It's the exact same principle that hospitals use to sterilize surgical tools or that labs use to sterilize petri dishes. It's not a kitchen gadget. It is a vessel designed specifically to manipulate the ideal gas law to your advantage.
So how does it do it? How does it solve the 212-degree problem?
It traps the steam. That's the whole trick. It has a heavy locking lid with a rubber gasket that creates a perfect seal. So when the water inside starts to boil and turn to steam, the steam can't get out.
It's stuck. It has nowhere to go.
Right. So more and more water molecules are forced into the gas state inside this sealed container. And what happens when you cram more gas into a fixed volume? The pressure builds up.
Okay.
And this is where the ideal gas law comes in. Pressure and temperature are directly linked. As you increase the pressure inside that pot, you physically increase the boiling point of the water.
You're literally squeezing the water so hard it can't turn into a gas easily.
That is a perfect way to think about it. Go back to that dance floor analogy. The pressure is like lowering the ceiling down on top of the dancers. It makes it much harder for them to leap up into the air, so they have to get way more energetic. They have to get much, much hotter before they have enough energy to make that jump into the gas phase.
We're raising the energy ceiling.
Exactly. At sea level, normal atmospheric pressure is about 14.7 pounds per square inch, or psi. At that pressure, water boils at 212. But inside the pressure cooker, we add another 15 psi of pressure on top of that. And at that higher pressure, the boiling point of water is no longer 212.
It gets higher.
It shifts all the way up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit.
15 psi. That is the magic number. It's on every gauge in every instruction manual.
That's the gold standard for home sterilization. 15 psi gets you to 250 degrees F.
And 250 degrees is the bunker buster.
That's the one. At 250 degrees, the game is over for the endospore. That level of thermal energy is intense enough to finally penetrate the protein coat, to vibrate the molecules so violently that the bunker itself falls apart. The proteins denature, they unravel like cooking an egg, and the precious DNA inside is destroyed. It is total, complete, irreversible annihilation.
I just love how, I don't know how metal this all is. We are literally manipulating atmospheric physics just to assassinate bacteria on our lunch.
It's biological warfare using thermodynamics. You are creating an environment inside a pot in your kitchen that does not exist naturally on the surface of this planet, all to kill a life form that evolved to survive practically everything else. It's amazing.
Now, the source is very clear about the protocol. It's not just about hitting the temperature. It's about how long you stay there.
Correct. The gold standard protocol is 15 psi for 90 minutes.
90 minutes. That seems like a really long time. If 250 degrees is the kill temp, why not just like 5 or 10 minutes?
Heat penetration. This is so, so important. You aren't sterilizing an empty jar. You are sterilizing a big, dense jar packed full of grain oats, rice, whatever, and that massive grain acts as an insulator.
Of course. So the steam on the outside of the jar might be 250.
But the very center of that dense block of grain inside the jar takes a long time to catch up. There's a thermal lag. So when your pressure cooker gauge finally reads 15 psi, the steam is 250 degrees, but the core of your quart jar of rye berries might still only be 190 degrees.
And if you stop the process too early.
If you only run it for, say, 30 minutes, the very center of that jar might never have actually reached 250 degrees. You might have survivors hiding out in the middle.
Oh, a cold spot in the center.
A little safe haven. And if there's even one survivor, what happens?
It wakes up and eats its way out.
Exactly. The bacteria will start in the center and just spread outwards, ruining the whole batch. So the 90-minute rule is a safety buffer. It ensures thermal equilibrium. It guarantees that every single grain, from the glass edge to the absolute core, has been held at 250 degrees long enough for certain death.
So, 15 psi, 90 minutes. That is the recipe for total victory in the microbe war.
It is. If you follow that protocol, you win. Your grain comes out a true, sterile, blank slate, ready for your mushroom culture to inhabit without any competition.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There's always a catch.
Pressure cookers, especially the big ones you need to do, like 7 jars at a time.
Yeah.
They're not cheap.
No, they're not. A good all-American pressure canner, which is kind of the gold standard, can cost several $100s. Even the standard entry-level Presto 23-quart is a significant investment for someone who's just curious about a new hobby.
And let's be honest, they're kind of intimidating. You've got this giant metal pot, steam hissing, gauges, rattling weights. It feels like you're operating a small locomotive in your kitchen.
And they demand respect. You are dealing with a vessel containing high-pressure, superheated steam. They have safety valves for a reason. You can't be careless with them.
So this is where the source gets really interesting and starts talking about the workarounds, what it called the broke boy alternatives, life without a pressure cooker.
Right, because people are clever. And they've been trying to find ways around the laws of physics, or at least find loopholes, for a long time.
The first method it mentions is something called fractional sterilization, or Tyndallization.
Right.
That sounds very scientific and fancy.
It's actually a very old technique from the 19th century, before autoclaves were common. And the core idea is brilliant. It's basically psychological warfare against bacteria. You trick them into lowering their defenses.
How do you trick a bacterium?
You exploit their wake-up signal. Remember how we said that when things cool down after boiling, the endospores sense it's safe and they germinate?
Right. They survive the boil, then they wake up when it's over.
So Tyndallization uses that reflex against them. The process is this. On day 1, you take your jars of grain and you just steam them or boil them in a regular pot for, say, an hour or 2.
Okay, so that kills all the active stuff.
Kills all the active stuff, but leaves the endospores. Then you take the pot off the heat, cover it, and let it sit at room temperature for 24 hours.
And in those 24 hours, the endospores are thinking, phew, that's over. Time to wake up and eat.
Exactly. They drop their shields, they shed the bunker, they germinate into their vulnerable vegetative forms. They're soft and squishy and ready for dinner.
And
then on day 2, you boil the whole thing again.
You get them when they're vulnerable.
You nail them when their shields are down. Since they're not endospores anymore, the 212-degree heat of boiling water kills them instantly.
But wait, what if some of them were lazy? What if some didn't wake up on the first day?
And that's why you do it a third time. You let it cool for another 24 hours to give any stubborn ones a chance to wake up. And then on day 3, you boil it one last time to kill off the last of the stragglers.
You're luring them out of their bunkers into an ambush.
It's a trap. It's a clever way to use their own survival instincts against them.
Does it actually work?
It can work. But the source is quick to point out that it's way less reliable than a pressure cooker. It takes 3 days, it's a lot of work, and there's always a chance that some super resilient endospore just decides not to germinate, or that the heat shock didn't trigger all of them, so the failure rate is much higher.
It's a gamble. But it's better than nothing if you have no budget.
It is. It's a valid scientific process, just an inefficient one.
But then, the source unveils the ultimate broke boy hack, the savior of the modern novice cultivator.
The Uncle Ben's method, also known as Spider-Man tech in the community.
I honestly laughed when I read this section. We're literally talking about those plastic pouches of pre-cooked, microwavable rice, the kind you buy at the grocery store for $2.
Specifically, yeah, the ready rice style bags.
Yeah.
The ones that are sealed in a retort pouch.
How is this a thing in mycology?
Yeah.
How does a bag of microwave rice solve the single biggest problem in the hobby?
Okay, just think logically about what that product is. It is cooked, hydrated, nutritious rice, sealed in a plastic bag, and it sits on a non-refrigerated grocery store shelf for months, sometimes up to a year, without going bad.
Okay, right. If I just put my own leftover cooked rice in a Ziploc bag and left it on my counter, it would be a science experiment from hell in about 2 days.
It would be a biohazard. So how does the company, Uncle Ben's or any of the generic brands, how do they keep that rice from rotting for a year?
I always assumed it was full of preservatives.
Nope. Read the ingredients. It's usually just rice, water, and maybe a little sunflower oil. There are no magic chemicals in there. The secret is the factory.
The factory.
The corporations that make this stuff, they have massive industrial-scale autoclaves. They're called retorts. They're the size of a small room, and they can process thousands of these pouches at once.
Oh, I see where this is going now.
They've already done the hard part for you. They put the cooked rice in the pouch, they seal it, and then they run those sealed pouches through an industrial sterilization cycle that hits temperatures and pressures you could only dream of achieving at home. They sterilize it after it's been sealed in the bag.
So the inside of that sealed bag is
Perfectly sterile. It is a self-contained, sterile environment filled with perfectly hydrated, sterile grain. It is exactly the product you were trying to create with a pressure cooker, but it's available off the shelf for the price of a cup of coffee.
That is absolute genius. You're not buying rice. You're buying a sterile environment. You're outsourcing the sterilization.
That is exactly what you're doing. You're leveraging the multi-million-dollar equipment of a food processing giant. You don't need a pressure cooker because the factory already used theirs on your behalf.
So the entire technique is just, you buy the bag, you carefully inject your mushroom spores into it through the plastic, and you tape up the needle hole.
That's pretty much it. You wipe the outside of the bag with alcohol, that's sanitization. You inject a little bit of your spore solution, and then you cover the injection hole with a special breathable tape to allow for gas exchange. It completely bypasses the entire process of sourcing grain, rinsing it, soaking it, and pressure cooking it.
It lets you skip the entire physics lesson we just had.
It does. It's a massive shortcut.
So if this is an option, why does anyone bother with a pressure cooker at all? Why not just use rice bags forever?
Well, the source calls it broke boy tech for a reason. It's great, but it's not perfect. It has some real limitations.
Like what? What are the downsides?
First, you can't see what's going on inside. Most bags only have a small clear window at the bottom, so spotting contamination early is really difficult. Second, the moisture content is often too high for some mushrooms. The rice is cooked for human consumption, not for mycelial growth, so it can be a bit mushy.
And too much moisture leads to
Wet rot. The enemy returns. Even in a sterile environment, too much water can suffocate the mycelium and lead to bacterial growth. And the biggest issue is economy of scale.
Right. Couple of bucks per half pound of rice adds up really fast.
Exactly. A single pouch might cost you $3 or $4. You can buy a 50-pound sack of whole oats from a feed store for $20. That's what, like 40 cents a pound? If you just want to grow a few mushrooms one time, use the pouch. If you want to make this a serious hobby, you need a pressure cooker. It pays for itself.
But as a way to just dip your toe in, to try it out without dropping hundreds of dollars on equipment.
It is a brilliant and legitimate workaround. It has lowered the barrier to entry to this hobby for thousands of people. It's a great example of community ingenuity.
It really just reinforces the central theme here, doesn't it? Whether you're using a $500 autoclave, a $90 pressure cooker, or a $2 bag of rice, the mission is identical.
Defeating the endospore.
It all comes back to respecting your enemy.
That is the #1 takeaway from all of this. If you underestimate these organisms, if you get lazy, if you think good enough is good enough, they will humble you. They have been surviving on this planet for billions of years. They've seen it all. They know how to wait.
And it kind of expands the whole thing. We started out talking about a very specific technique for a niche hobby, but we've really ended up talking about the incredible resilience of life itself.
We're talking about an organism that can essentially shut itself down, build a fortress, and then sit in boiling water and just laugh at you. And that's simultaneously terrifying and deeply, deeply awe-inspiring.
It definitely makes you look at a little spot of mold on your bread differently. It's not just ick, rot.
It's a conqueror.
It's biology doing what biology does best, which is persisting against all odds.
Yeah.
It refuses to die.
So, okay, let's do a quick tactical recap for anyone listening who might be about to start this journey.
Sure, let's nail down the key points.
Rule number 1, understand the battlefield. Know the difference between sanitization and sterilization. Right. Sanitization just reduces the enemy count. It's for things that can defend themselves. Sterilization means 0 survivors, and it's absolutely mandatory for your grain. Don't confuse the two.
Rule 2, know your enemy.
The endospore, the microscopic tank in its heat-resistant bunker that survives boiling water and waits for you to lower your guard.
Rule 3, understand your weapon's limitations.
An open pot of boiling water is stuck at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It is physically incapable of reaching the temperature needed to destroy the endospore's bunker.
Rule 4. The ultimate weapon.
Pressure. Adding 15 psi with a pressure cooker changes the laws of physics in that pot, allowing water to reach 250 degrees. Hold it there for 90 minutes, and the war is won.
And finally, Rule 5. The cheat code.
If you can't afford the ultimate weapon, you can leverage someone else's. Pre-sterilized rice bags from the grocery store are a valid shortcut that lets you bypass the physics problem entirely.
It's a solid battle plan. It actually makes me want to go bleach my entire kitchen right now.
Never a bad idea, but just remember, bleach is still just sanitizing.
Don't ruin my sense of security.
Please, sorry. Fair enough.
But really, this has been such a fascinating deep dive into that invisible world all around us. It's a reminder that whenever we try to cultivate anything, we're stepping into the incredibly complex ecosystem. We're trying to carve out one tiny little safe space for our chosen organism in a world that is just teeming with competitors.
And the only way to hold that space, to defend that territory, is by understanding the fundamental rules of the game. The physics, the biology, it's all connected.
It's science, it's warfare, and it's gardening, all rolled into one.
And if you do it all right, at the end of it, you get mushrooms.
Hopefully. And if you get a jar full of green slime instead,
Yeah.
well, now at least you know exactly why.
Exactly. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a specific organism that outsmarted your process. It's a lesson.
Failure is just data.
Yeah.
All right, before we wrap this up, here's a final thought to chew on. We've spent this whole time talking about how we have to go to these extreme lengths using pressure cookers to mimic intense geological conditions. High heat, high pressure, just to kill these things.
Right, we're creating an alien environment in a pot to destroy them.
But flip that around. If these bacteria evolved a defense mechanism to survive being boiled alive for hours, conditions that don't really happen naturally on the surface of the Earth, it makes you wonder what kind of environments life is actually prepared for. It suggests that life has evolved to handle things far more hostile than we can even imagine. It makes you wonder what else is sleeping out there, in the deep-sea hydrothermal vents or frozen deep under the Antarctic ice, just waiting for the right conditions to wake up.
That's a properly chilling thought.
Yeah.
That what we consider normal life is just the stuff that's awake during the comfortable interlude.
Exactly. Are we just living in their nap time?
Wow. Okay, leaving everyone with a nice dose of existential dread. I like it.
That's what we do.
Fair enough.
Thanks for listening. Happy growing. And don't forget to subscribe.